I never thought that I would personally encounter something so horrible. These are the last words of my friend, who died 2 months ago under rather strange and mysterious circumstances. In fact, I had been thinking about it since that unfortunate night when Mike called me and tearfully asked me to come to his place. That's when it started. Yes, exactly that night, July 8th, 2021. It was only now that I decided to write about it, because the creepiness that had been happening to my best friend all that time was starting to happen to me. I will probably start from the very beginning with the call I've mentioned a little earlier. It was about 3 a.m. I was tired after a hard day at work and had already been sleeping. The annoying vibration of the cell phone forced me to open my eyes and reach for the bedside table. God, why can't you sleep? I thought in those seconds, looking at the name of the caller, and at the time, it was 2:11. Hello? I mumbled sleepily. Hello, Alex. Do you hear me? My friend's frightened voice got me out of my drowsiness a little bit. I do, I grumbled irritably. What happened? Do you know what time it is? Sorry, bro, but I have an urgent matter. What kind of matter? Look, I know this may sound silly and ridiculous now, but could you come to me? Now? Yes, now. In a half tone, he almost whispered, Hey, what's going on? Can you explain? Why don't I tell you when you get to my place? Okay, I'll be right there. Again, I grumbled unhappily and hung up, without listening to my friend's gratitude. I washed my face, pulled myself together, put on my tracksuit, and called a taxi. It was cold. There was not a single star in the sky, and lightning flashes repeatedly warned me of the coming rain. I've just lit a cigarette as the bright light of xenon headlights came into my eyes approaching the driveway. The car pulled up, and a kind, fat driver kindly agreed to wait for me while I finished smoking. The cigarette flew into a flower bed, the car door slammed, and my house began to gradually disappear from view. It didn't take long to get to Mike, only 15 minutes, and that was during the day. Now there were particularly no cars, and the drive took at most 10 minutes. Mike was already standing at the doorway, waiting for me, nervously lighting his cigarette from the cigarette butt. Finally, you've arrived. I forgot to tell you to stop at the drugstore on the way and pick up some sedatives. Breathing out the bitter smoke, Mike muttered, Well, do you want to go now? Why not? I don't feel like going home.
Are we going somewhere else?
The driver shouted. Yes. Hold on a second. I need to go to the nearest pharmacy.
There's a 24-hour drugstore nearby.
We got in the car and continued our conversation. What happened to you? I asked a question that had already become quite annoying to me. Don't yell at me right away, okay? Maybe you'll think I'm crazy, but I have a feeling that something bad is going on in my apartment. What do you mean? Something really bad, bro. Have you been watching too many horror movies? I asked, smiling. But seeing the really frightened face of my friend, I put the conversation in the same direction, knowing that he wouldn't call me and wouldn't beg to come over for some trifle. Anyway, take a look. Mike took his phone out of the pocket and started the gallery app, where I actually saw a bunch of different pictures, and one of them he opened and zoomed in. Involuntarily, goosebumps ran down my still sleepy body. The picture showed my friend's contented, not particularly sober face, but beyond that, I saw something else. A strange silhouette was standing behind Mike, next to the window. Who's that? I wondered. Michael gave me a puzzled look and opened the next picture. There was that silhouette again, only this time it was outside the window, and he was standing on the balcony, staring out the window. It looked like Mike was taking the picture in the dark, so the quality was very poor, but still, I could really see that someone was standing there. I don't know who it is or where it came from in my apartment.
Here's the pharmacy.
Pointing to the glowing sign with his finger, the driver intervened in the conversation. I'll be right back. Mike pulled his jacket over his head and left the car, leaving me with the phone. I continued to look at the strange pictures, letting even the thought that my friend simply had nothing to do and decided to play a joke on me, having photoshopped these pictures. But having looked attentively at them, I don't find any signs of editing, even though I wanted it very much, and this fact quickly discouraged me from going up to Mike's flat, not to mention spending the night at his place. My friend came out of the pharmacy and quickly ran to the car while unpacking a packet of pills and popping them into his mouth. He jumped into the car, and the driver drove off with the nasty click of the turn signal. On the way back, we were silent. Neither Mike nor I dropped a single word, and the driver looked at us suspiciously, apparently having heard my friend's story and mistaking us for some kind of psychos. Nevertheless, he drove us back, and after paying for the drive, we left the car. The rain seemed to be getting heavier and was about to turn into a downpour. I didn't tell you everything. Suddenly, Mike spoke. I didn't want strangers to hear that. Oh, I was wondering why you were silent all the way. That's not the only reason. Shall we go to my place? Or do you want to stay here? He sounded a little irritated. Well, let's go. Mike went forward, entered the staircase first. I followed him, and already on my way up, he started the story again. It didn't stop with those pictures. The one on them. Who's that? I interrupted him. How do I know who he is? But it was as if he realized that he had been spotted, and he stopped hiding, scaring the shit out of me. I wouldn't have called you if the problem was only about the photos. I would have spent the night, and tomorrow I would have decided something. Yeah, well, as for me, pictures are enough for calling. Compared to what happened next, believe me, it's nothing. Mike turned the key, and we stepped into a dark apartment, which was flooded with light as soon as Mike switched it on. That same evening, I began to notice things lying on the floor, and in general, items were well away from where I left them. Maybe it's just your imagination? Really? You know my memory, and that happened a few times, so what do you think? I think there's something in my flat, and I'm scared out of my mind to stay here alone. Well, you said you could handle it. I smiled, trying to change the conversation. Maybe we should call a priest, let him read the prayers, and hang some crucifixes. We'll try tomorrow. I hope you're not going home tonight. Looking at me with the eyes of Puss in Boots from Shrek, said Mike. Of course not. It's raining cats and dogs, and I can't leave you in such terrible condition. Thanks, bro. He rushed to me and gave me a big hug. Honestly, I had never seen him like that before. So frightened, and at the same time happy that he was not alone in his apartment. The hand of the clock slowly crossed the 4 o'clock mark. It wasn't even about to get light. We sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee with cookies, smoking, and talking. We were so tired that we fell asleep right on the cushioned corner of the kitchen. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck somewhere very close, followed by loud thunder, and the sound of car alarms literally pulled me out of the embrace of sleep. It was still dark outdoors. Wiping my eyes, I looked around the kitchen one more time, and not seeing my friend nearby, I was taken back. "Mike!" I shouted. "Mikey!" There was no trace of sleepiness left. I turned on the light in the kitchen, went out into the hallway, and also flicked the switch there. "Where are you?" I mumbled to myself, and suddenly I noticed that my friend was asleep just near the closet. I quickly went to him and woke him up. He looked at me with dumbfounded eyes, as if seeing me for the first time. "Why are you lying here?" "I don't know. Didn't you fall asleep next to me in the kitchen?" "I think so." "Wake up right now." He sat there as if being enchanted. "I thought I was dreaming that someone was dragging me, but I couldn't see who or where." "Well, he must have dragged you here. Get up, you freaking lunatic." I gave him a hand, and we went back into the kitchen. The clock showed early 6 in the morning, but the black clouds didn't let the sun's rays fall on the ground. Instead, the rain still fell, pouring down on everything. I conceded at the time my friend had been dragged there by what was in his pictures, but still, the theory of sleepwalking prevailed. But I changed my mind the second I picked up my cell phone. It had been lying on the kitchen table the whole time. I just wanted to see the time, unlocked it, and there was a camera turned on, and there were new photos in the corner of the screen. I opened it up and dropped the phone out of my hand. I stared at Mike with my eyes open wide. Cold sweat instantly appeared on my forehead. I was paralyzed. I stood there and tried to analyze what I saw on my phone, and there were photos of me and Mike, photos of us sleeping in the kitchen. It was like someone was taking pictures of us from the window, from above, by the refrigerator. The horror that came over me at that moment was impossible to describe. "Mike, have you kept the door locked all night?" "Well, yeah, I always lock everything, especially lately." I could hardly pick up the phone. "Watch this." I showed the pictures to Michael, who in turn retreated in shock, covering his mouth with his hand. Now I was really afraid, because I couldn't find an explanation for what had happened. Well, I tried to put it down to the fact that someone got here, but no, still logic and common sense didn't win. Without a moment's delay, we left the apartment. "And what should we do next?" Mike muttered, while smoking a cigarette with trembling hands. "I think we should go to church and explain everything to the priest. I hope he will help us." "What if he won't?" I just silently shrugged and took out my phone to call a taxi. So we drove into the first church we saw and met the priest, a very kind and sympathetic man, as it seemed to me at first. He listened to us and agreed to help. After writing down Mike's address, he asked us to leave, as he was about to have a wedding. "He is to come at 4, Mike muttered. "What are we going to do next? I'm not going home." "Neither am I. Let's go to my place." All the time we were sitting in my kitchen, we tried to build some theories and find logical explanations for what had happened, but neither I nor Mike could think of any. The rain didn't stop pouring down, getting heavier or weaker from time to time. We didn't want to leave the house in such weather, but the hand of the clock was fast approaching the number 4, and it was time to go. Mike reluctantly got ready and followed me out. The priest was already waiting for us at the door, carrying a small bag. "Hello again. Sorry for being late. You didn't even go into the apartment. Well, let's see what you have there." Almost in a whisper, said the priest. We slowly went up to the floor, and Mike opened the door, making way for the Holy Father. "It's a little messy around here, though that's not a problem. I've also been a youngster, so I understand." The priest smiled, but Mike and I stood on the doorstep and looked at the mess all around the apartment. A mess that wasn't there this morning. Everything was on the floor. Broken dishes in the kitchen, clothes crumpled and smeared in something, broken chairs and other furniture. I can't even describe the horror that engulfed me in those moments. The priest was already taking out his inventory from his bag, and we were still standing on the doorstep, baffled by what was happening. Soon prayers were heard from the room, and we still managed to enter the apartment. The whole procedure took about an hour. The priest walked around the room, read the prayers, sprinkled holy water on the walls, and put crucifixes on every wall of the room. Afterward, the Holy Father came up to us and said, "Oh, guys, it's hard for me to even stay here. The atmosphere in this apartment is very bad. God will help you. He will help you." He crossed both of us. We paid him some money, and he left the apartment. I felt as if he had finished everything quickly just to get out of here, and when he talked to us about the bad atmosphere in the apartment, it was all over his face. The real horror started that evening, as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon. All day long, I helped Mike to clean up the mess that some unknown force had made in his apartment. But honestly, it was really hard to stay there. Mike was also shocked. He barely said a word, just silently raked up all the garbage and scattered it in the bags like a robot. "Mikey, would you like something to drink? You look terrible." "I don't think it's a good idea, and you haven't eaten anything yet. Let's at least have a snack." "I don't have anything to eat." "Oh, come on. There must be at least something." I went to the kitchen to check the fridge. I opened it and got the smell of rotten food. There wasn't much. All vegetables were rotten, and there was a small piece of fried meat, and it was covered with a green crust. Bread was also moldy. "Mikey, everything went bad here." He rushed into the kitchen. "What do you mean? I've bought everything 3 days ago." Once again, a shiver ran down my spine. "You know, I'm not surprised at anything anymore." My friend was frustrated. He went back to his room, sat down on the sofa, and grabbed his head. "It seems to me that nothing has changed since the priest came. I still feel like there's somebody in here besides us." "Yeah, well, I think we're good now. Why don't you take your phone and walk around the apartment, taking pictures?" "No problem," I said, taking my phone out of my pocket. I turned the camera on and walked down the hallway to the kitchen, from the kitchen to another room, and from there to the balcony. After taking a lot of pictures, I went back and sat down next to Mike. "Look, there's no one here," I smiled, showing photos of my friend's apartment, but it didn't last long. Mike silently took the phone from my hands and made it brighter. The smile disappeared from my face in a flash. There was a figure in every picture. I couldn't see it very well, since I was taking pictures in the dark. It was a person. At least it resembled a person. 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. But the head seemed to be small. There was no hair on it. It seemed that there was just a skull instead of a head. I couldn't get a good look at the body itself, since it blended in with the darkness of the rooms, and in each of the pictures, I couldn't see him in full. He seemed to be hiding, behind a curtain, behind a door, in the hallway. I wanted to get out of here, to run away as fast as I could. I didn't need any more proof that something bad was here, but Mike hadn't reached the end yet. On my way back to the room, I decided to take a photo in the mirror. My friend finally got to this picture and dropped the phone from his hands, while I jumped up and grabbed my clothes with my hands, shaking with animal terror. In addition to my reflection in the mirror with the phone in my hand, there was another one in the picture. It wasn't a person. It was something creepy that approached me from behind and peered out from behind my shoulder. The skull was paper white, with ugly holes in its eyes, nose, and mouth, as if someone had poked them out with rebar. Again, I couldn't see the whole body because it was standing behind me, but I could see some of it. Some black rags with a usual human arm sticking out of them. that was about to touch my shoulder. Panic made us do at least something. We put on jackets and wanted to escape the apartment as fast as we could, but the front door was locked. Where's the key? I always put it on the drawer near the mirror. It's not here. Do you have a spare one? I lost it 2 years ago at the club. Where is it? Mike panicked, scattering papers, receipts, and other trash he had just folded neatly near the mirror. Searches were unsuccessful, and in a couple of dozen minutes, we were already sitting on the sofa again and thinking what to do next. Do you have a rope? Do you want to go down from the window? We are on the 4th floor, and I'm afraid of heights. Maybe we should call a locksmith. Let's try. Mike grabbed the phone and started looking for numbers. The night is coming on. Do you think someone will come? I asked him hesitantly. I don't give a shit. I'd give any money to get out of here. I can't stay here any longer. Mike called one guy, and during the conversation, he seemed to agree to come over, but would only be an hour later, as he lived in another part of the city. After this call, there was silence all around. Not even the ticking of the clock could be heard. Something is wrong, Mike. Do you feel it too? Just after my question, the table next to the window in the room literally flew up in the air and immediately fell to the other side, breaking and folding in two. I screamed. After the table, the chairs flew into the air, but this time they were already flying towards us. One flew past me as I ducked down, and the other hit me right in the arm I was trying to cover myself with. I collapsed on the floor, gripping my arm and screaming loudly because the pain was unbearable. Mike screamed and ran to me. Immediately the lights in the apartment went out, and not just went out, but the bulbs one by one began to burst. What is going on? I gritted my teeth and growled, still holding my arm. I don't know. Suddenly, he stopped talking and started sniffling, and I smelled a faint whiff of burning too. As I looked around the room, I saw the crucifixes that the priest had hung up begin to smoke. It was as if they were about to ignite. I couldn't stand being here any longer, so I got up and rushed into the hallway. I kicked the door as hard as I could, hoping to kick it down, but it turned out to be extremely hard. I bruised my leg as well, and Mike didn't hesitate to grab me under my arms and drag me into the bathroom. He locked the door and propped it up with a drawer, so we sat there for a very long time. The seconds were comparable to the minutes. The time seemed to be infinite. During this time, we repeatedly heard strange noises outside the door. We could even hear footsteps, so we sat in the bathroom and waited for the doorbell to ring, waiting for the locksmith to open the door and finally let us out of this hell.